It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Shorman. This is the Forum on Eagle Television. It's brought to you by HaysMed. Thanks for watching because, on this program we had a chance to not only talk to people who are doing things in the community, people that may have retired and gone on to other great things. That's our guest today, Tim Chapman, who's a former CEO of the Fort Hays State Foundation. And Tim, good to have you back on the program.
Thanks, good, great to see you.
Now, you don't look retired. You still have on your Fort Hays State jacket. You have your Fort Hays pin on. Are you still fully retired?
No, I wouldn't say I'm fully retired. I'm still on contract at the foundation. After being involved in fund development for 30 years, it's hard to give that all up in the snap of a finger. So during the transition with Jason Wilby, and Jason's doing a great job with the team, they've asked me to stay on, kind of help with the transition. There were lots of folks that I had built relationships with over the years. I wanted to maintain those relationships from a working perspective, and many from a personal perspective as well, which that will be ongoing. But with the Journey campaign being kicked off this summer, the public phase of that being a $100 million effort, I asked if I could continue to help with that effort. They were gracious enough to say, yeah, we'd love to have you keep staying on and helping with Jason. So that's what I do. Some days more than others.
What does that mean, though? Does that mean a few days a week, or do you have some trips you go on? Because I know a lot of.
No, I'm in the office every day. In the mornings, I go in. I like to visit with staff. I like to see a little bit of, if there's some things that have transpired on things that we're working on. So I always like to be there on a daily basis in the mornings specifically, and then I might jump to some of my other personal interests in the afternoon.
I know you mentioned 30 years of raising funds, but part of that 30 years you did that as your day job, and then at nighttime went to your studio and did artwork. So it sounds like now maybe you have just a little bit more time in the studio and a lot less time in the office.
Well, that's true, and I've always said it's vitally important to have a balance in your life from a professional and personal perspective. I think that balance now, from my interest in the arts as well as from a development standpoint, is very well balanced for me, based upon me moving away from the foundation but still being involved there, but absolutely spending more time in the studio.
We talked it's been about a year ago when you were just going through retirement. You talked about how you just needed to take a break and do some things, and you did that in a sense of I'll say, travel around the world. Where all did you go?
We went to all through Europe this summer. That's something that Mona and myself wanted to do, and so we planned a trip from Amsterdam down to Budapest and to Prague and the Czech Republic, and it was absolutely wonderful. You talk about the history of art and where we are today here in the States, and then you go to Europe and you look at the art and the history there. Absolutely no comparison, and I wanted to experience that, and I never had, and so it was an absolutely kind of a life-changing trip for me, and it made me realize we need a lot more art here in Hays, Kansas.
And why those areas? Why did you choose those particular areas versus others?
Well, it was a river cruise, and so
you had to stay on the cruise. You had to follow the river, basically.
We stayed on the river, but even with that said, with the many stops that we had along the way, Vienna and all those, it was fantastic. And again, the artwork, you couldn't look anywhere without seeing masterpieces. And so it was absolutely wonderful.
You look at the history of art and the history of art in the United States, specifically history here in Kansas. There's a couple hundred years. When you get over in Europe and some of those areas, how far back did you see art?
Oh gosh, thousands of years. You look at and you go into communities and you talk to some of those individuals and you say, tell me a little bit about the history of your community. And they say, well, we're one of the younger communities, we're only 1,000 years old. And you look at that in comparison to where we are with a couple hundred years here in the States. We don't know what old is, or really what history is, based upon where the arts have come from the Renaissance periods, even further back to today, and how that has impacted the arts all over the world, specifically here in the United States.
Now, are you going to do some more traveling to follow up on that same theme to other parts that maybe...
if it's up to my wife, absolutely. She wants to travel everywhere. She's always had that travel bug. But yeah, we'd love to continue to travel around the world and see the different styles and the different works of some of the masters from around the world, because it's inevitable that that does impact you in regards to what you're working on, the style of what you're trying to do, the subject matter of what you're trying to work on. And it's, from my perspective, because I love the art so much, it's life-changing.
Well, you mentioned that earlier. What's so much life-changing about it that affects your art? Because having a chance to look at your art really over a course of years, you have some very unique and beautiful pieces of art, not only around Hays, but Kansas and in Manhattan and specific areas there. What changed by going and doing
I would say just the pure inspiration of seeing what others have done over time, specifically thousands of years of that work, to what we're doing, and specifically what I'm doing. Just the pure inspiration of seeing that work and seeing the processes of how they did it back then to what we do today. It inspires you. I mean, it can either crush you or it can inspire you, because you think, wow, there is lots of good artists out there, historically from 1,000 years ago to current, and that can crush you. But from my perspective, it is so inspiring because I feel like I have so much more to share from an emotional perspective of what I want to create. It makes me want to move forward. It makes me want to get into the studio and learn and stumble and grow based upon what has happened in the past and what I've seen.
I was amazed. You take a look at some art you can put out fast. You make it happen, 2 or 3 days, a couple months. And you look back in generations back, some of that took literally generations to get some of that art.
And some of it still isn't done to this day.
Still being worked
from
on.
An architectural perspective. Yeah, that's what really is amazing. And really, for me as an artist, sometimes I do kick out something in a couple of days, and it's done. It's how you want it. And other times you struggle with it as you continue to go on, and you want to throw it against the wall and start over, which inevitably I've done some of that too. So it is interesting what those processes are, if it's from an architectural perspective versus a two-dimensional piece. And that approach and how you want to move that forward.
We're going to talk about what you're doing now, some of the things you see doing in the future as far as some of your artwork and the direction you would like to go with that. We're going to take a break. Our guest is Tim Chapman, former CEO of the Fort Hays State Foundation. Back with more after this from Hays Med.
Hays Med is your first and best choice for healthcare. They're the only facility providing tertiary level services in this region. With more than 70 physicians and 26 specialties ranging from heart, orthopedic, spine care, cancer, obstetrics and gynecology, wound care, rehabilitation and surgery, including the Da Vinci robotic surgery, Hays Med is your comprehensive health provider for people throughout Western Kansas. Hays Med, helping people be healthy.
The most exciting yards in football. It's NFL Red Zone from NFL Network. Get every touchdown from every game, every Sunday afternoon. And football doesn't stop on NFL Network. It goes all week.
We're covering it like crazy.
Get NFL Red Zone from NFL Network today.
Add NFL Red Zone so you can watch all the game-defining yards in football. Call us at 877-61-EAGLE today.
Welcome back to the second half of our forum program here on Eagle TV. If you have any ideas, suggestions, maybe some thoughts on future programs, let me know. My email address is gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. You can also find us online on Facebook on ECTV Forum. Look for us there. Tim, it's good to have you on our program because you were such an integral part of Fort Hays State, the foundation, raising funds, contributing scholarships, all those things. And now to be able to break away from that a little bit and then take a look at art as a subject. How has that changed when you've had more time to evaluate that?
Well, I would tell folks the Journey campaign is a huge effort for Fort Hays State and vitally important, and I would encourage everybody to go to foundation.fhsu.edu, get more involved with the Journey campaign.
You still have it in you, don't you? Yeah.
Well, it's important because it's all for the students. But then moving to my studio and being able to work, I've never really experienced the time to be able to sit and contemplate work other than late at night. People always say, Tim, do you ever sleep? No, I never really did, because I'd jump into the studio and Mona would slip a piece of pizza under the door every once in a while. But it's really given me the opportunity for time to maybe look at the work, do a little bit more research, understand processes maybe that I didn't fully understand before. But from an inspirational perspective, it's given me the opportunity to jump in, start creating work, and whether I like it or not, and it maybe needs to go in a different direction, it's just given me the time to think more about that and to work more freely based upon that.
We were talking during the break a little bit about the time challenges right now with some of the ability to use electronics, computers, et cetera, to make shapes and molds. Hundreds and thousands of years ago, they couldn't do that, and some of that art is incredibly large.
Well, again, the experiences of my travels and looking at some of the monumental bronzes that you see and some of the other work, and again, the technology that we have today and being involved specifically from a casting perspective to cast metals, that's a ton of work, from the welding to the chasing of the work and all that, and you're using all these high-speed drills and welders and all that to get it done, and
something they didn't have back then.
They did not have that then, and it just literally makes me scratch my head and wonder how they accomplished some of those things. Aliens obviously were involved, but it is amazing. And again, that's what's so inspiring about seeing that work, not only from an architectural perspective, but from the casting and the huge metal castings that were done back then. Is just unbelievable.
Tim, if we were going to go into your studio right now, what would we find?
You'd find a lot of work. I've done a big tall piece that stands about 10 foot tall of a figure that I call the Maestro. It's completed for the most part, just waiting to get it to the foundry. I've got another life-size figure going that I call Ballet, and it's a gal that's reclining, but she has feet that are about this big. And it's just one of those things where I thought, from a ballet perspective, it's the last thing you'd want to see on a ballet dancer are feet this big. So for some reason, I decided to do that. So those two pieces are close to being completed. Working on some smaller pieces, maquettes as they call them, for people to look at for consideration. Just completed some work for the Bank of Hayes here in town, and I've got some pieces at the foundry out in Colorado. Colorado Castings is where I normally take my work to have it finished. So some work there. So again, the amount of time that I've had in the studio has allowed me to create more, obviously. Which is fun. And some of it's commission work, other is just stuff that I've done, a la the ballet dancer with big feet.
With big feet, yeah.
If anybody would like a ballet dancer with big feet, I've got one now. But that's what makes it fun for me, just to be able to create how I want to create, and for the viewer to be able to come in and say, that's awesome, or that's something that doesn't really doesn't flip my switch. But that's the fun thing for me, is just to be able to create and be a freelance artist and do whatever I want. Gives me goosebumps.
Now, what's next?
As far as from an art perspective?
Yeah, you're doing this. Is there anything else you're going to kind of look at as far as expanding your repertoire of art?
Well, I've never really pushed my artwork and gone into shows and that sort of thing, and that'll be the next step. Obviously, with having the website in place and people to go to that website is good, but people always like to see work, and so it's my hope that I can get into more shows and carry some of that work out into the public.
Well, you do have a website, your website, timchapmanart.net.
That's correct.
And if somebody wants to go to that website, they can see that. But you're right. To see it on a website and to see it in person are two different things.
Yeah.
How do you get some of those bigger pieces to an art show? I mean, it's not easy to carry some of that around.
No, I mean, you got to crate it up and pack it up and carry it forward and set it all up. And so, from my perspective, if that's something that I need to do, and I don't really need to do that, I hope that I can do more through the website versus carrying a 10-foot bronze piece with me around the country. But in other cases, that's why they make the smaller maquettes, where you can take a block of pieces to a show and say, here's the work, and it's available in all different sizes.
All across the U.S., if there's one show you'd want to go to and show your art, where would it be?
There are so many different opportunities for that, from the east to the west coast. I don't know if there's any one specific show. I think it's just a matter from a geographical perspective, where are the artists located and the availability of getting the work to those locations. Again, in talking with other artists, some of the tipping points, if that's how you want to define it, for them has been through their websites, where people have said, hey, I've seen this work, could I see more, and that sort of thing. And that's kind of the direction that I want to go. And so, you can throw your work out there in different places a lot easier using good old electronic media versus that physical carrying things around.
Well, very good. If you go to the website, you can check out your artwork and see what you have. When they get there, any special things you'd like to send them and go look at this?
Well, the website is designed to show both two-dimensional and three-dimensional and works or things in the works, and that's how it's divided out in 3 different things. So if you have an interest in two-dimensional, go to the two-dimensional side. If it's three-dimensional, go there. And so if there's questions, of course you can post them there for me as well. I encourage anybody to come over to Chapman Studios and see what I'm doing. I tell folks I'm in there every day, and if you hear music playing, I'm in there. And if I happen to be dancing around, I apologize. But I'm normally there in the afternoons working, and would encourage anybody to stop
When does
by.
a pizza come under the door from Mona? That's what I want to know.
That's entirely up to Mona.
That would be the good time to stop at your studio at that point.
Yeah.
Tim, congratulations, not only
Thank you.
on choosing to say, hey, I'm going to do something I really want to do, which is the art.
Yeah.
Also, thanks for staying engaged with Fort Hays State and all the great things.
Well,
you're doing.
support the Journey campaign. Vitally important for our students. It's the largest campaign in the school's history. It was publicly announced this summer. It's a 5-year effort. It's all for the students, from scholarships to departmental support to athletic support. So if anyone has a specific interest in supporting a certain area, they can do that. All dollars are accountable towards the campaign. And again, I would welcome anybody to go to that website as well, foundation.fhsu.edu, and get more involved, learn more about the Journey campaign. Jason Willoughby, the CEO and president of the foundation now, and the team are a great group of individuals, and they're there to help support you in any way possible. So please do that too.
Tim, thanks for being here. We appreciate you being on the show and all you're doing
Thanks
in
for
our
having
community.
me, Gary. Appreciate it.
Tim Chapman, former CEO of the Fort Hays State Foundation, has been our guest here on the Forum. It's brought to you by Hays Med and by Eagle Communications, our community connected.
It's a beautiful day in our super high-speed internet great customer service neighborhood. Like you, this is where we live. In fact, our company is employee-owned, so it's our goal to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community by delivering faster, more reliable internet, clearer, more feature-laden phone service, quality TV channels, all with the level of customer service you'd expect from people who are your neighbors. Eagle Communications, our community connected.